I'm Jimmy Bach, and this is History with Jimmy, along with my producer Chandler Holmes. And today, this is a special day because of President's Day being tomorrow. We thought that talking about the first president, George Washington, was appropriate. And you know, there's been so many books and so much written about George Washington. There's no way that we could get everything that we would want to put into this particular episode 35. So we're going to cut it down a little bit and stuff. And so I'm going to start off with officially known as Washington's birthday. The first federal holiday of the year was meant to honor the country's first president, George Washington. He was born in Virginia, February 11th, 1731, according to then used the Julian calendar. And in 1752, however, Britain and all of its colonies adopted the Georgian calendar, which moved his birthday a year and 11 days to February 22nd, 1732. Eventually also the holiday included Abraham Lincoln, whose birthday is February the 12th. So that's one of the things. So it says, again, why do we celebrate President's Day? The country celebrated the Founding Fathers' birthday long before Congress even declared it a federal holiday, which was the country's first federal holiday to honor individual birthday according to the National Archives. And the Uniform Holiday Bill mandated 3 holidays. President's Day occurs on Monday to prevent midday week shutdowns and add longer weekends to the federal calendar. So just to give you a little bit of his family history, he was the first president, commander of the Continental Army, president of the Constitutional Convention, farmer, and through these roles, Washington exemplified character and leadership. And we will hear a little bit more about that as we get into this. His father was named Augustine Washington. He had 3 brothers, Samuel, John, and Charles. He had half-brothers, Butler, Lawrence, and Augustine. His formal education, said here, was none. His birthplace was Popes Creek, Virginia. His mother was Mary Ball Washington. His sisters were Betty Washington and Mildred Washington, and he had a half-sister, Jane Washington. So we'll talk a little bit here about one paragraph just to add to this. It says, on January 6, 1759, Washington, at age 26, married Martha Dandridge Custis, the 27-year-old widow of a wealthy plantation owner, Daniel Park Custis. Martha was intelligent, gracious, experienced in managing a planter's estate. The couple had a very happy marriage, and they lived at Mount Vernon, where Washington cultivated tobacco and wheat. The marriage gave Washington control over Martha's 1/3 dower estate in 18,000 acres. Curtis estate, he managed the remaining 2/3 for Martha's children. As a result, he became one of the wealthiest men in Virginia, which increased his social standing. So, as I was doing research, there was 26 pages that had information about the battles that he was in and everything. So at this point, I thought that's going to be a little much, and Chandler and I would not be able to get 26 pages of information about Washington, and then some of it gets a little boring and stuff. So I'm going to read what was also in there, 10 of the most important things to remember about George Washington. Number 1, Washington was mostly self-educated. When George Washington's father died in 1743, there was little money left to support the formal education of 11-year-old George. Washington's formal schooling ended by the time he was 15, but his pursuit of knowledge continued through life. He read to become a better soldier, farmer, and president. He corresponded with authors and friends in America and Europe, and he exchanged ideas that fed the ongoing agricultural, social, and political revolutions of his day. So he was an avid reader. And reading is very important. Is one of the things that was just in the paper about how reading scores are so low, but the younger generation needs to be able to read a book. So you can come to Sherrill's Library. There is a book about Washington there. There's many other books there, but reading books is very important, and George Washington was the first one to point that out. He was fearless in battles, with men and officers being shot down all around him. George Washington rode forward to take charge of the collapsing lines at the Battle of Mongolia on July 9th, 1755. While riding along the ranks looking to steady the men, Washington had 2 horses shot out from under him and 4 bullet holes shot through his coat. I don't know about you, but I'd be a little bit nervous about that if that was me on that horse. At the Battle of Princeton, January 3rd, 1777, Washington rode forward on his white Challenger as he led soldiers in a successful counterattack against the British. At one point, Washington was no more than 30 yards away from the British line and was an easy target. Despite the widespread fears that he would be shot down at any moment, Washington was heard to say to his troops, "Parade with me, my fine fellows. We will have them soon." Washington's bold actions saved the American Revolution twice. After a series of stinging defeats in New York and New Jersey, the Continental Army and the patriotic cause seemed near extinction by December 1776. Most generals would have slipped away to the safety of the winter quarters, but General Washington had an entirely different plan in mind. His bold counterstroke across the ice-choked Delaware River on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1776, led to 3 successful battlefield victories and a stunning strategic reversal which bolstered American morale and saved the new nation. With the Revolution once again on the brink of defeat in nearly 1781, Washington embarked on a risky march south to surround and attack Lord Cornwallis's British Army at Yorktown, Virginia. Washington's victory at Yorktown in 1781 proved to be the decisive battle of the war. Number 4, he never abused power. While Washington is best known for the positions he held, both as a general and president, it is his willingness to surrender power that may be his most important legacy. On December 23rd, 1783, Washington strode into the Maryland State House in Annapolis and surrendered his military commission to Congress, thereby affirming the principle of civilian control of the military. When King George III heard that Washington would surrender his commission, he reportedly said that if he did this, he would be the greatest man in the world. As president in a time when there were no term limits and many would have supported his lifetime role, Washington stepped down at the end of his second term, setting an important precedent that lasted until this day. Washington owned more than 50,000 acres and was an ardent promoter of the westward expansion. He owned 50,000 acres in portions of Virginia, which is now West Virginia, as well as Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, Kentucky, and Ohio. And long before Lewis and Clark set forth on their journey westward, Washington had a keen appreciation for how an expansion into the Western Territory would not only enrich the new nation, but would help to better knit the country together. By linking the headwaters of the west-flowing Ohio and east-flowing Potomac, Washington envisioned a continental transportation system that would allow the future produce of Ohio Valley to flow easily to the Atlantic ports. Even Washington's choice to place national capital along the banks of the Potomac was designed to reinforce this westward-looking view. Number 6, Washington loved parties and was an excellent dancer. I never knew that. Never heard that told to me in school. Many see Washington as a stoic and unapproachable figure, but in reality, he was a man who loved entertainment and the company of others. There are many accounts of his dancing late into the nights at various balls and parties. He loved theater and attended plays of all sorts throughout his life. And during a time where stiff 18th century formality pervaded relations between the sexes, Washington was known as an interested and engaged communicator with women. Number 7, Washington was the first to sign the United States Constitution. During the American Revolution, George Washington witnessed firsthand the serious shortcomings of the Articles of Confederation. So in 1787, Washington traveled to Philadelphia to attend a convention assembled to recommend changes to the Confederation. He was unanimously chosen to preside over the Constitutional Convention, a job that took 4 months. He spoke very little in the convention, but few delegates were more determined to devise a government shown with real energy and authority. And as president of the convention, Washington was given the privilege of being the first to add his name to this government document. So he was the first one to sign the Constitution. Number 8, he was unanimously elected president twice. Washington's leadership during the Revolution and Constitutional Convention, unimpeachable character, and his demonstration willingness not to abuse power and make him the ideal president candidate. And even his lack of biological children eliminated the concerns of some who worried about the establishment of an American monarchy. During the first election in 1789, Washington won the electors of all 10 eligible states. And in 1792, Washington received all 132 electoral votes, winning each of the 15 states. Number 9, Washington was a true agricultural innovator and pioneer. Throughout his life, Washington exhibited a keen interest and an eye for useful technologies of all sorts. He established himself as an innovative farmer who switched from tobacco to wheat as his main cash crop in 1760. In an effort to improve his farming operation, he diligently experimented with new crops, fertilizers, crop rotation, tools, and livestock breeding. Leveraging a fine donkey sent to him as a gift from the King of Spain, Washington became one of the most foremost breeders and promoters of the American mule, which we had talked about in another episode, that mules were used in World War I, and they ended up importing some from South America because they had run out. So Washington was involved in promoting the American mule to be used in the United States. And as president, Washington signed a patent for a new automated mill technology. Intrigued by design, Washington had the Oliver Evans automated mill technology installed in his grist mill, which there were a lot of grist mills at that time. He found time to design a new 16 two-story threshing barn that greatly improved the process of separating wheat from chaff. Number 10, Washington is the only slave-owning president who freed his slaves. George Washington inherited his first slaves when he was 11. Washington's attitude towards slavery gradually changed as he grew older, and especially as he fought for liberty in the American Revolution. In his will, he arranged to free those slaves that belonged to him upon his wife's death, about 123 of them, and as required by law, his estate paid for the care of former Mount Vernon slaves for the decade after his health. Unfortunately, it applied to fewer than half of the people in bondage at Mount Vernon. Those owned by the estate of Martha's deceased husband, Daniel Park Custis, could not be legally freed or sold and were inherited by Martha Washington's grandchildren after her death. Many Washington and Custis enslaved people had married and formed families together, and for them, separation from loved ones tainted celebration of newfound freedom. So George Washington, at the end, did not believe slavery was appropriate and did what he could to free the ones that he had. So just a couple other things we're going to add here at the very end of this episode. Washington was somewhat reserved in personality, but he had a strong presence. He made speeches and announcements were required. He was not a noted orator or debater. He drank alcohol in moderation, but was morally opposed to excessive drinking, smoking tobacco, gambling, and profanity. He was taller than most of his contemporaries. Accounts of his height ranged from 6 feet to 6 feet 3. He was known for his strength. He had gray blue eyes and long reddish brown hair. He did not wear a powdered wig, as some had previously said. Instead, he wore his hair curled, powdered, and tied in a fashion of that day. He also suffered from tooth decay. Most people don't know that. He ultimately lost all of his teeth except one, and he had several sets of false teeth during his presidency. Contrary to common lore, they were not made of wood, but of metal, ivory, bone, animal teeth, and human teeth, possibly obtained from slaves. His dental problems left him in constant pain, where he was treated with a certain disease. He experienced a painful growth in thigh early in his first presidential term, followed by a life-threatening bout of pneumonia in 1790, which he never fully recovered. He was a talented horse person. Jefferson described him as the best horseman of his age. He collected thoroughbreds at Mount Vernon, and two of his favorite horses were called Blueskin and Nelson. So I think it's appropriate today that we recognize George Washington as one of the best presidents that we've ever had. And I'm sure that other people have other opinions about that, but based on the research that we've done and stuff. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. This is episode 35. This is Jimmy Bach, along with my producer Chandler Holmes, signing off. And please click the like and subscribe button and getting more people to watch our episodes. Thank you again.